Hello again. I'm going to lecture today on Chapter 2 of our text, The Chemistry of Life. If you've had some chemistry, especially at college level, you'll be in good shape for this chapter. If not, you're going to have to really study this chapter hard and several times through. Please go to the back of the chapter. At page 74 is the study guide. I really want you to print that off and use that as I go through the rest of the chapter. There are 4 subsections of this chapter. The first discusses atoms, ions, and molecules. The second section covers water and mixtures. The third covers energy and chemical reactions. The fourth is called organic compounds. These are compounds found in your body. Okay, page 42 starts with atoms, ions, and molecules. You remember the chart of the table of the atoms that's available in many textbooks or online. There are 91 naturally occurring elements, such as oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, helium, etc. 24 of these are found in the human body. You can see those in table 2.1. All atoms have a similar structure. They are made up of electrons, neutrons, and protons. The protons and neutrons are found in the nucleus of the atom, and then they are surrounded by different numbers of electrons in clouds. What is an electrolyte? Oops, I missed a page. I'm sorry. Okay. Now we're going to talk about ions, and electrolytes. Ions are charged particles that have an uneven number of protons and electrons. Protons are positively charged, electrons are negatively charged. Now, a particle that gains electrons and therefore has more electrons than protons is negatively charged, and it is called an anion. Anion for negative, anion for negative. If it loses electrons, then there are more protons and it's positively charged. This is called a cation. You'll see some examples there on page 45. An electrolyte is a very powerful word and one that you will hear many, many times. An electrolyte is a substance. There are many different substances, but it's a substance that will ionize in water. When this is put in water, it will break apart into cations and anions, and it is capable of conducting electricity. These electrolytes are very important because of that very fact, that they do and can conduct electricity. They also have very strong chemical reactivity. Now a little bit about molecules and chemical bonds. As we go from atoms, the next step is making up molecules. A molecule is just a chemical particle composed of 2 or more atoms. These atoms might be the same atom, such as hydrogen. There are 2 atoms of hydrogen in a molecule of hydrogen. Or they can be different atoms, such as water has 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. Molecular weight of a compound is the sum of the molecular weights of all of the atoms that make it up. There you will, on page 46, you will see how we calculate the molecular weight of glucose, which is C6H12O6. Remember this when you get to your first laboratory experiment. Now, what holds these atoms together? There are many different types of chemical bonds, B-O-N-D, bonds. These are shown in table 2.3. Let me just say, one of the primary kinds is called an ionic bond. And this is just an attraction that exists between a cation, that's positive, and an anion, which is negative. These come apart very simply when they're dissolved in water, and these are some of our primary electrolytes. Another form of bond is a covalent bond. This is a much stronger bond, and it actually is formed when electrons are shared between two different compounds, two different atoms. I'm sorry. Okay, now section 2.2. I know I'm going quickly. One reason is that I don't want to run out of time in making this, so it'll all go on in one place in YouTube. The other is that I can't teach you all of the chemistry that you might want to know, but this is all that you need to know. It's a very quick sketch through this. Second section discusses water and mixtures. First, let me just tell you what a mixture is. A mixture consists of substances that are physically blended but not chemically combined. A mixture has 2 or more different substances mixed together, but there's no bonding that goes on between them. Water is the primary solvent in our body. Our body actually consists of somewhere between 50 to 70% water. It is the primary constituent of our body. And as I've told you, each water molecule there's one of my cats, keep going. Each water molecule has 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 of oxygen. The term solvency is the ability of a solvent to dissolve other chemicals. Water is sometimes called the universal solvent because it dissolves more different substances than any other liquid. A couple more simple definitions. A substance that dissolves in water, such as sugar or salt, is called hydrophilic, meaning it likes water. Relatively few substances, such as fats, are hydrophobic. If they're mixed with water, would actually float on top. Okay, now on page 50, a brief section on solutions, colloids, and suspensions. A solution is very simply a mixture that combines a solute and a solvent. It has a certain concentration, and that concentration is defined as the amount of solute that's actually found in a certain volume of solvent. And that is one of the measure of concentration is weight per volume, or better yet, it should be called mass per volume. Okay. There are several, there's a table 2.4 that discusses the most important parts of types of mixtures, solutions, colloids, and suspensions. Now, molarity, you're going to need this. You will need this. Sorry for my pronunciation. You will need this when you do laboratory experiment 1. And I've already sent each of you a 2+ page writing that I did yesterday that will help you quite extensively with this, another cat, with this experiment. Molarity. The molarity of a solution is the number of moles of the solute found in 1 liter of solution. Now, how much is 1 mole? 1 mole, for example, remember before I showed you that the structure of glucose was C6H12O6 and had a molecular weight of 180 or 120. Oh, I'm getting confused. 180, I was right the first time. If I have 180 grams of glucose that is in solution in 1 liter of water, then that is called a 1 mole solution. It's as simple as that. Don't make it difficult. It's the molecular weight of a solute that is mixed in 1 liter of water. We also want to talk about electrolyte concentrations, because that also will be very important. Electrolyte concentrations are, the unit is an equivalent. 1 equivalent, EQ, of an electrolyte is defined as the amount that would electrically neutralize 1 mole of either hydrogen ions, H+, or hydroxide ions, OH negative. Okay? 1 equivalent. You will see this again in some of your calculations. Acids, bases, and pH. An acid is a proton donor. It is a molecule that releases a proton when it's mixed in water. It's as simple as that. So it will have, never skip that, back up. A base is a proton acceptor. A proton, basically, in its simplest form, is just the atom of a hydrogen atom. Hydrogen has 1 proton and 1 electron. It is number 1 on the chart of the elements. Acidity is expressed in terms of pH. Small p, capital H. There is an equation that you should use or should write down and use. The pH of any solution is the minus the logarithm base 10 of the hydrogen ion concentration. On 53, you will see that if we have a 10 to the minus 7th molar concentration of hydrogen, the log of 10 to the minus 7 is minus 7. So the pH of that solution is the negative of the log, so negative of a negative is a positive. So the pH of that particular solution is plus 7. All pHs are between 0 and 14. The solution that is neutral, perfectly neutral, has a pH of 7.0. Anything with a pH less than 7, below 7, is acidic, and anything above 7 is called basic. Figure 2.12 shows various liquids on the acid scale. You see pure water is at neutral with a pH of 7. To the right are more basic solutions. To the left are increasingly acidic solutions. Section 2.3 now discusses energy and chemical reactions. You absolutely must know that there are millions of chemical reactions that go on in our body every single day. If we are alive, then there are chemical reactions happening. First, a couple of simple definitions. One of my advanced degrees is in Newtonian physics, so this makes a lot of sense to me. Energy is defined as the capacity or the ability of something to do work. In physics, the term work means that something with mass is moved. So energy is a capacity of something to move something else. It's also should be considered the energy to make something else happen, such as a chemical reaction. Potential energy is just the energy that is stored in an object because of its position or its internal state. Kinetic energy is the energy of motion, energy that is doing work. Now, look at the section that's titled Classes of Chemical Reactions. You will see the formula for ethanol mixing with water, ethanol mixing with oxygen. These are the products, or these are the reactants on the left of the arrow. Then the arrow leads to acetic acid and water. Ethanol and oxygen are the reactants. They react together. Acetic acid and water are the products. And this is a chemical equation. There are several different kinds of chemical reactions that you should know at least the basic names of. One is a decomposition reaction. In this, one molecule in the simplest form is breaking down into two or more simpler molecules. Another is a synthesis reaction, and this is just the opposite, where two different molecules, for example, A plus B, are forming a product, AB. This is synthesis. This is taking two or more smaller molecules combining to form a larger one. In an exchange reaction, two molecules actually exchange atoms or groups of atoms in this reaction. You'll see an example there. Now, just a little bit about reaction rates and a couple more words that I want you to know. The reaction rate is, it's very simply how fast that a reaction is able to take place. There are several things that determine that. One is the concentration of the reactants. The more reactants there are, the faster this reaction can take place, because they will, the concentration or the solution is more crowded, and these molecules collide more with each other. The reaction rate is also higher if the temperature is higher. In our bodies, a normal internal body temperature is about 99 to 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the normal body temperature. And at that temperature, these reactions all take place. A catalyst. A catalyst is some substance that can be added to the reactants. And this catalyst allows the reaction to take place faster. Okay? That's all I really want you to know about that right now. A catalyst allows the reaction to take place faster. Another definition is metabolism. You've heard it said that one person may have better metabolism than another. All of the chemical reactions that take place in the body all together are called metabolism. Metabolism. It has two divisions: catabolism, which consists of decomposition, and anabolism, which consists of synthesis. Now, we'll go one more step here. Catabolism, when something is breaking down, also leads to the release of chemical energy. In an anabolism reaction, this stores energy. So you can see how this is very important to the body also. Table 2.5 shows you a list of energy transfer reactions that take place in the human body. Now 2.4. We'll discuss very quickly organic compounds. You may have heard of basic chemistry versus organic chemistry. Organic chemistry is commonly not available in many high schools, but is available in college. Organic chemistry is simply the study of compounds that have carbon in them. If you go one more step, you may have heard of biochemistry. Biochemistry is the study of the 4 different classes or categories of organic molecules that are found in all living creatures. These 4 basic categories that I'm going to go on and discuss are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Why is carbon so important? Carbon is a very versatile atom. The basic carbon atom has a nucleus and four, the basic carbon molecule. I'm going too fast, my tongue is getting tired. Has a carbon atom with four atoms of hydrogen attached. This, because of that particular shape, it can form long bonds. And you will see several of these if you look on page 214. These are some of the functional groups that these backbones can carry. A chemical background or a chemical backbone can have 2 carbons, 3, 5, 12, 25, 30, and on up to an infinite number. That is because of the uniqueness of the carbon molecule. If there is only one of these functional groups that are shown in figure 214, then this is called a monomer. Mono meaning one. But most large molecules that you'll come across here in our bodies are called polymers. And these contain repetitive groups of identical or similar subunits. Okay, now the first of our different compounds are the carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is a hydrophilic organic molecule, meaning it very easily mixes with water. It has a general chemical formula you'll see on page 59. CH2O and sub number N, where N is the number of carbon atoms. I know that might be confusing to you. Look at figure 2.16. These are all the simple sugars. These are 3 major monosaccharides, as they are called: glucose, galactose, and fructose. They all have 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens. They are in different positions and in different shapes. But these are all monosaccharides. The other 2 monosaccharides that we will mention briefly and discuss in much more detail in another chapter or 2 are called ribose and deoxyribose. On page 60 now you will see 3 different disaccharides. The di means 2. And these are sucrose, lactose, and maltose. These disaccharides are made up of 2 different or the same monosaccharides. Can you see that? These are the 3 most important to our body. Sucrose, made from glucose and fructose; lactose, sometimes called milk sugar, glucose and galactose; and maltose is 2 molecules of glucose linked together. At the bottom of the page is a polysaccharide, meaning that it has many different molecules of monosaccharide, and this is called glycogen. It has numerous different glucose molecules linked together. Glycogen is very, very important to our bodies because it has energy storage. It is a polysaccharide that makes up many of the cells of the liver, muscles, and brain. It is a long-branched glucose polymer. The liver takes extra glucose after a meal and produces, with a synthesis reaction, this glycogen reaction. And this can be stored in different places. And then the glucose can be used later. There are also two other kinds of polysaccharides you might have heard of. One is starch, that is an energy storage polysaccharide in plants, and cellulose, also, that is found only in the cell walls of plants. It is the primary component of wood, cotton, and paper. On table 2.6, you will see many different functions of these different carbohydrates. Take a look at that table, and no, you don't have to memorize all of these, but you should have some familiarity. You should be familiar with these, at least. Can anybody pronounce that for me? Next group, next type of organic molecule is a lipid. This is an organic molecule composed almost exclusively of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, with a high ratio of hydrogen to oxygen. These have different functions you'll see in table 2.7. The 5 different primary types of lipids in humans are fatty acids, triglycerides, phospholipids, icosanoids, and steroids. First, look at a fatty acid. A fatty acid is a chain, usually, that has between 4 and 24 different carbon atoms with a carboxyl group at one end and a methyl group at the other end. If you look at figure 2.19, at the very top is a simple example of palmitic acid. Then you see that that is a very simple fatty acid. The right-hand end has a carboxyl unit, C3, and the left-hand end has a hydroxyl unit, CO2H. Now, if all of the carbons are bonded singularly to hydrogen, such as here, this is called a saturated fatty acid. And that's just the definition. You've heard that term, saturated or unsaturated. Saturated are the kind that can do our bodies harm if there are too many of them. If they are unsaturated, such as at the very bottom figure 2.19, right in the middle, you will see 2 different pairs of carbon that have double bonds between them. So this is an unsaturated fat. Depending on how many of these carbons have double or even triple bonds determines the amount that it is polyunsaturated. Now, the bottom entire molecule is an example of a triglyceride. Triglyceride is something that is measured when you have the lipids in your bloodstream measured. These are liquid at room temperature and can sometimes be called oils. Animal oils are almost all saturated fatty acids. Peanut oil, olive oil, corn oil, linseed oil are healthier for us, and these are unsaturated, and they are better to use. Okay, turning the page again now to 64. Phospholipid. Phospholipid. Your author says they're similar to neutral fats, except that in the place of one fatty acid, they have a phosphate group, which is in turn linked to other functional groups. A phospho group contains one phosphorus atom and 4 oxygen atoms. You'll see they're highlighted in blue. The most important part of phospholipids is that they are found in every cell membrane in the human body. One end of this molecule is hydrophilic. The nitrogen-containing group at the top will mix with water, and it is found on the inside of the cell membrane, in the middle. The hydrophobic group that does not like water is found on the outside of the cell membrane. That's phospholipid. That's really the only thing you have to know about these. That the cell membranes are basically made up of phospholipids. Let's just skip the icosanoids. I'm not a chemist either. And let's go on to steroids. Steroids, the word steroid has gotten a bad connotation, but our body contains many steroids, cholesterol being the parent steroid. Every other steroid in our body is synthesized from cholesterol. So you can tell from this that our body requires cholesterol and makes normal, naturally occurring steroids. Don't forget that. These are the good kind of cholesterol and steroids. These are absolutely necessary. If we don't eat enough fat in our diet, our bodies can synthesize cholesterol from other different products in our body. You'll also find that a steroid later is a type of hormone that is secreted by the adrenal gland. We'll come back and talk more about those when we talk about the glands of the body. Finally, we'll mention proteins. Proteins are very, very important. Basically they are a polymer, meaning several different atoms or several different molecules together. A protein is a polymer made up of amino acids. At the top of figure 2.24, the top of page 65, there you will see 4 of the 20 different amino acids: methionine, cysteine, triosine, and arginine. And then you will see how they are bonded together by peptide bonds in part B of figure 2.24 rather. Remember that there are 20 different amino acids. Proteins have very convoluted and different kind of structures. Look at figure 2.25 on page 67. At the very top is the primary structure. You'll see each little ball that looks like a pop bead. If any of you are old enough to have ever heard of pop beads, these were little balls of plastic that could be popped together. Kids would play with them. Probably would end up swallowing 1 or 2, and some people in the country, so they were probably pulled off the market. Each different little circle, colored circle, is an amino acid. And if you take the trouble to count them, you can see what the primary structure. It's just the different sequence of these amino acids. You should also know that there are secondary structures that can form folds or helixes because of hydrogen bonding, and then a tertiary structure and a quaternary structure. I want you just to have heard those terms. Proteins have many, many different, very, very important functions. And these are listed in a section on page 68. The basic structure of our body is made up of proteins. Hormones and other cell-to-cell signals take place with proteins. Membrane transport, catalysts, recognition and protection properties that we'll learn about in the immune system, cell movement and cell adhesion all take place because of proteins. Your author here goes back and describes enzymes and metabolism just a little bit. An enzyme is a very specific protein that acts as a catalyst. If you look at figure 2.27, the reaction on the left does not have a catalyst, and it takes much more energy for it to take place. There is a catalyst present in the right-hand side in part B, and you can see that the activation energy is much less. So there is much more energy that is released by this particular reaction. I'm going to briefly now talk about ATP, other nucleotides, and the nucleic acids. ATP, learn that, memorize that name right now. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. Adenosine triphosphate. The protein part is adenine. On page 2 or figure 2.30, you'll see that amino acid in the brown. There is a ribose sugar attached to the adenine, and then 3 different phosphate groups. So triphosphate, ATP. This is the body's most important energy storage molecule, and then subsequently energy transfer molecule. If a reaction takes place, such as you'll see written out on page 71, if there is a particular enzyme, ATPase, that's what an enzyme is, you'll see that ATP mixes with water to form ADP, which is diphosphate, plus a free phosphate group plus energy. And this energy can form heat or do work. This is the way in which many different reactions of our body take place. They absolutely require the use of energy. Okay, getting to the end here, figure 2.31 shows how some ATP can be formed. It can be formed by a synthesis of glucose and water. This is not a synthesis. This is a breakdown reaction. This is glucose plus water is converted to carbon dioxide and water with the release of energy. Okay, there's the synthesis. That energy then can form, you have an ADP molecule with a free phosphate group. With that extra energy can form an ATP molecule that's found inside of each and every cell. Okay, that in a nutshell is chapter 2. Thank you.